All right, so welcome to the next video in going from two-dimensional sketches to three-dimensional objects using Fusion 360. We're going to go ahead and continue and move a little bit further into how we make the 3D objects. And we've already covered extrude in prior videos, and today what we're going to work on is the Revolve feature. What I really like about Fusion 360 is if you hover your mouse the cursor over some of these pictures, it gives you a nice description of what is going to happen to the right. So what you can see here, this is a unique way to take like a cross-sectional slice and take that shape, and then we're going to go ahead and spin that, revolve, around an axis, and that's going to help us create our three-dimensional shape. So just to kind of compare the difference between the two, I'm going to go ahead and make two cylinders that are the same, from two completely different starting points. I'm going to start with the extrude that we're used to. So remember, all of our 3D models begin with sketches. We create a sketch. It doesn't matter right now what plane we pick. I'm just going to go ahead and pick the front plane. And the classic way that we have done a cylinder is by taking a circle. There's my trusty center point circle. I'm going to make it a 50 millimeter diameter circle. I'm going to stop that sketch like we always do, and then I'm going to go to the extrude. In this case, I'll just use the shortcut because it's up there. And I'm going to make a cylinder that's, let's say, is 100 millimeters tall. Right? Yeah, simple, right? Two steps. And we have our cylinder. Just to save some time, I'm going to go ahead and start on a new plane. I'm going to create my sketch. And this time, I'm going to start on that plane, right? So I can see the top of the cylinder. I think it's the top. It could be the bottom. It is the bottom, excuse me. I'm going to make another cylinder. I'll make it out here so we can go ahead and see that it is definitely different. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what a cylinder would look like if I cut it half down the middle. And that's going to be a rectangle. So I'm going to go to my rectangle. It doesn't really matter, but in this case, a 2-point rectangle is probably going to be better because I can control width and height just a little bit easier. So I'm going to come down here, and if I want this to be 100 millimeters tall, I'm going to go ahead and tab over until I get the height in blue. There it is. Right now it's set at 75, but I'm going to go ahead and make that 100 millimeters tall. Whoop, excuse me, not 10. Tab over to 100. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and unlock that. It's going to let me. Ooh, what happened here? Oh, excuse me. This is weird. It was locked. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that by double-clicking on here. If I made that mistake, we've already learned how we can fix this. We can go ahead and double-click with our left mouse key on that and just make it what we want. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, if I cut a cylinder in half, well, if the diameter is 50, then the width of the rectangle should be 50. We're going to think of this more like a radius. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll explain why after we see this. And I'm going to make that 25 millimeters instead of 50. And now we're kind of back. Sorry for that little hiccup. So now I have my rectangle, and it does not look like a cylinder by any means. But once we use that revolve feature, hopefully things become a little bit more clear. So I'm going to go under create, and now I'm going to go ahead and hit revolve. It's going to ask me in the menu, I'll bring this back over here, to select the profile. Remember, the profile is kind of like the face of the plane that represents that two-dimensional object. And now it's going to ask me what axis I want. And in theory, right now I have 4 axes. They represent the lines of the rectangle. And what we really like about Fusion 360 is before I do anything, when I click on my axis, and it doesn't really matter right now which one of these, I do know I want to revolve it in that direction so it's that high. It's 100 millimeters tall. I'm going to go ahead and pick this one. It gives you a preview before you hit the OK button. And now right now it still looks like a rectangle. When I take the view cube and twist it around a little bit, I start to see, oh, it has spun. And I can even kind of exaggerate this and grab and show you with the mouse. Left click on that little dot and you can use the mouse and kind of drag a direction. You could stop at any degree you wanted, or again, you could go under here instead of angle, you could type in 360. And that's going to give me my full cylinder. New body or join. In this case, they're not even touching, so there's really no point to join them. It would be a new body. and I would have two bodies. I would have one that represents the cylinder I just created using the Revolve feature, and one that would be the cylinder I use creating the Extrude feature. They are pretty much, except for being in different directions, identical. How do I know that? I'm going to go ahead and use that inspect, that measure tool under inspect. And if I click on the cylinder, it's going to give me a radius of 25, a diameter of 50, and this Z center position, that's the height. That's 100 millimeters, right? It's 100 millimeters off the bottom. And that's how I know how high it is. And if I click on this circle, it is, well, that's going to give me the distance, but if I go down to selection 2, the diameter is 50 millimeters. And in this case, the center Y position, which is how far it is off from the center in the Y direction, is again 100 millimeters. So you can see, why did I go back and I only made my rectangle on this one 25 millimeters? And that's because as I spun that rectangle to make the cylinder, that radius was going to double and turn into a diameter. So if I would have made it 50 to start with, it would have been twice as big. So that's how I can make some solid objects. But there's a couple cool features with the Revolve that allows me to make like some intricate hollow objects. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new design. I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to do something that I've done in some previous videos. I'm going to make a construction line. And that construction line, I'm going to put right down the center. I know it is horizontal because I have the horizontal constraint icon. I don't really care how long it is because I'm not really using it. And if you remember, when I click on it, over here under my sketch palette, I have this option to turn it into a construction line. How do I know it's a construction line? When I kind of highlight it, it's a yellow dotted line instead of a solid black line. Now I'm going to go ahead and make, some like funky looking shape over here that is kind of irrelevant in terms of size. But I'm just going to use a couple different features to make, like, I don't know, just one of the weirdest things I can come up with right now, which might not be too crazy for some of you out there, but I'll go ahead and make something kind of bizarre. And the key here is, just like any other three-dimensional object that I want to make, I have to have a closed sketch. And we know a sketch is closed when you're done clicking all your lines together, that it kind of shifts color. If you don't see that color change, you're not going to be able to turn that into 3 dimensions. And what happens a lot of times, remember, you have to zoom in, and maybe those two lines actually aren't connected even though you thought they were. You can do that a couple different ways. You can extend the line over, or if you remember, we have this coincident constraint where you can kind of grab those two lines and kind of make them meet at one point. So here's this crazy shape I've just made. I'm going to go ahead and stop my sketch. Now I'm going to show you 2 different ways that I could revolve this to make 2 very different objects. The first could be the classic way that I just did it before. I'm going to go ahead and go down and click Revolve. I'm going to pick the plane or the profile. And then literally I can pick any of these axes. So imagine if I wanted to revolve it around this axis. Oops, excuse me. Select the axis. Select my profile. Doesn't look like much from here, but when I turn it on its side, I have this like really weird looking kind of like dish, right? That's pretty cool. That's what I was trying to design. But I picked the wrong axis. I can go ahead and delete that axis. And if I wanted the right axis to select, it was going to be this one. Now it starts to look like maybe some funky chess piece. Or if I hollowed that out right there in the middle, maybe it could be like a candle holder. So again, that's still more of a solid object. I don't have to pick an axis that is attached to my object. I also could revolve it around an axis in the middle of nowhere. And now it's going to go ahead and it's going to revolve that shape around this construction line axis I made. And what have I done? I've created this big hollow opening, and now I have some weird, this could be some weird like bushing that I was going to go ahead and put on, maybe like a metal rod. This is maybe some weird type of like a springy suspension if I'm using flexible plastic. But I would just have to be sure of my measurements, that this distance that crossed the opening was the distance that I wanted it to be. Maybe it was the diameter of whatever I was going to go ahead and stick into that opening. But there's just a different way to use the revolve with an axis that actually isn't touching on the 2-dimensional object. that you drew. So that is kind of it in a nutshell when it comes to the Revolve feature. So just a quick reminder, you definitely need a two-dimensional sketch that's closed. You pick the profile and you pick the axis. The last reminder is if you don't need this to go all the way around for some reason, you can go ahead and type in whatever degree you want. Maybe you want to print it up in two pieces and then assemble it because it was too big. You can go ahead and print these two pieces up. All right, thanks.